Hello, everyone. We are back. It's Tanya and Johanna.
Woohoo!
I mean, how has it not been like a crazy? We have some crazy stories, but guys, it's going to be another episode. I feel
I don't
like
even know how long we've been off the air.
So yeah, you guys already know we've been off for a month. We took some time off. We had a little bit of a false start last week. But everything happens for a good reason, right? It just wasn't meant to be the first show back. So,
It just means our guests are up leveling. If we have guests that are double booked, I think that's a good problem to have. I think.
Yeah. And so that's exactly what happened. We had the episode for Bigfoot. Jay had double booked, and it was just this colossal. But everything was all good, and he's going to be on next week, guys. We are excited to have him on. But the show must move on, and we're excited already for our next guest. And we are coming back here to talk about dance movement therapy. I'm really excited for this episode because I am always intrigued with how many different types of therapies are out there in this world, and what's considered therapy. I mean, there's so many different kinds.
I'm telling you, there's no reason why everybody can't be self-employed. I mean, there's always something that can be offered out there. I'm actually excited about this kind of therapy. This is the kind of therapy you want to go to.
Right. So, and you know what got me thinking about this, and why I wanted to pull in the particular guest that we have is, we had a couple of our guests who were talking about the importance of body movements. And it happened with several of our guests. It was, I think Leora had mentioned it, and then Bella when we were talking about tantra. So it just I wanted to see what else was out there. And I knew about dance therapy. I've heard of it before. I didn't really know a lot about it though.
I've never even heard of it. I've heard of yoga therapy. I've never heard of dance therapy though.
Yeah. And how did you hear about yoga therapy?
This woman named Tanya. I mean, who else would I have heard it from?
Yeah, I actually did yoga therapy, and we'll have to discuss that. We have to try to get, I will try to get the person who I used, and she was awesome. But yeah, I mean, there are all different kinds of therapies out there that will blow your mind away. But I did a little bit of history on, I wiggied, I will admit, on dance. Shocker, what else is on the internet on dance movement therapy. And basically the theory of dance movement therapy is that it's based mainly upon the belief that the body and mind interact, both conscious and unconscious movement of the person. And then through the unity of body, mind, and spirit, dance movement therapy provides a sense of wholeness to all individuals. So the body refers to this as discharging of energy through muscular skeletal responses to stimuli received by the brain. My mind was like, huh?
Right. Because I already lost you. I was like, what?
I'm like, this sounds like science.
I think I went into a hypnotic state for a second.
Right. But it's a very meditative process, and it's a way of being basically creative expression, and it's definitely falls more into the holistic field. But what I thought was interesting while I was looking at the history was that this came in waves. I mean, if you think about dance movement, it's been around since, forever. I mean, even in indigenous people and tribes and things like that, people use their body it's rituals and so forth. But what they had declared it as a historical part was that it came in two waves. And there was a woman named Marion Chase back in 1942 who was a dancer and choreographer. And she basically helped introduce that into the Western medicine, but it wasn't taken too seriously at that point. So not until the second wave, until the 70s and 80s, is where it was really identified as a psychotherapy. So it was kind of interesting to see how things have evolved and when it became more exceptional, basically of when you can do it and so forth. But when I was going through this and I wanted to know the history, I wanted to try to find a guest who not only I felt was, obviously passionate, but also so driven and so passionate about it that she uses all her expanses on it. So I was really blown away with Erica, who we're going to be bringing on here. Erica is a licensed clinical professional counselor, board certified dance movement therapist. She's also the CEO of Chicago Dance Therapy. Her passion is supporting individuals to change their lives by changing the way they move through it. She's known as the therapist who moves you. Erica's work has been featured in hundreds of publications and media outlets. So she's not just a therapist, like she's a public speaker. She goes out of her way and passionate about this. So I can't wait to bring her on board. Erica, welcome.
That was probably like the best introduction I've ever had. Thank you. I mean, like,
you're welcome.
I mean, not about me, but like the introduction to the field. I was like, damn, she really did her homework.
She always does her homework.
I always do my homework.
Always count on Tanya to do her homework.
Yeah, because I am definitely interested in the history of things and how they come about and when it becomes like this more popular item of when people really connect to it. So I really want to know, though, and I'm sure our audience does too, and we always start this out because it's like how, with especially the people we interview, is how did you get into this? Like, what was it that drove you to dance therapy?
So as you mentioned, I mean, dance and movement is not new. And even as a healing process, as an approach to mental health, it is certainly not new. Indigenous, tribes, people all over the world have been using it for centuries upon centuries. So that was really kind of how I first noticed that dance had healing properties. It very much was my escape, my outlet, when I was feeling good, when I was feeling bad, when I was stressed out, when I was overwhelmed. Dance was the constant for me. And I didn't take it quite to the level of professional dancer. I think I did the bar and bat mitzvah circuit as a backup dancer for one summer. So I guess I I got paid to dance. I guess I could technically call myself a professional dancer, but I didn't join a company. I didn't go to New York. I was definitely going to go the education route and was at this crossroads of like, am I going to be a dance studio owner? Am I going to be a dance educator? And none of those felt like my purpose or a path that I was destined for. And all the roads outside of that kind of told me, well, then dance is just going to be something you do on a Saturday night. And that didn't feel acceptable. So when I went off to college, I was fortunate enough to actually declare myself a dance major, because the audition process came once you were already in college versus doing it before. And around like the 4 to 5 month mark of being an undergraduate, the program director, professor, sat everybody down and asked how they thought it was going, kind of wanted to set realistic expectations, and looks at your transcript to see what classes you're currently taking, how you're feeling about those. And I was very transparent with her. I said, I love the classes. I love dancing and it's challenging me. But now we're getting to the point where we're going to do lighting and costuming and staging. And none of that appealed to me at all. And I feel like, okay, it doesn't appeal to everyone perhaps, but it's one of those things where if you want to be a professional, you do those. You do it whether or not it's your passion, because to be a dancer and to create and choreograph perhaps is your passion. And so I said, I'm just not feeling it. And I can't see taking all of these advanced classes should I pass the audition 3 and 4 years from now. There's got to be something else.
Right.
Plus, I don't have the technique. I didn't have the ability in me, technically, skillfully, to be the dancer that I knew was expected of that program. So she noticed I was taking psychology and asked me what I thought about it. And I said, I never thought to take it earlier than college. I had heard people taking AP psychology in high school. It was never on my radar. And I told her I have never taken a class that felt so right. I was reading phenomenon. I was reading things that I had experienced, and not just from like a mental health perspective, but almost like when you read about deja vu, like the actual experience of deja vu, and you think, oh my God, that there's a name for that? That happens to me all the time, right? There were psychological phenomenon that I felt the same way about. And I thought, oh, everybody must understand this, right? Everybody must have this experience. And I found out, no, that's not the case. Not everybody's destined to help people, right? Not everybody wants to listen or wants to help people in that capacity. So anyway, it was a couple-hour meeting, and she said, you like psychology, you want to keep dancing, you should look into dance movement therapy. And probably like most people that are listening, or maybe yourselves at one point, I thought to myself, is that real? Like, did you just make that up? Because that's
so like there's a whole class for this.
Yeah. And actually, I was at University of Florida at the time, and they had a dance in medicine program, but that was not dance movement therapy. However, that was how she knew about it, because they were looking at the therapeutic aspect of dance, not the therapy, which is different. We can get into later, but she knew all about it. And she said, go check it out. Tell me what you think. And that night, I literally didn't have to look back. I declared myself a psych major, and then decided that, 3.5 years from then, I would go on to pursue my master's in dance movement therapy and counseling.
Wow, that's impressive.
So that's my road. I wish I could say it was more. It felt like destiny. Felt like this is real, and that immediate visceral response of, and this is what I'm supposed to do. Okay, check. Next,
so how is it different for every individual? Because I'm assuming that it can't just be cookie cut and say this is where we're going to start off with. How individual and customized is this for each individual person that you have work with?
So just like talk therapy, right? For the most part is individualized, because everybody's symptoms, although, if we're looking at a diagnostic manual, there are criteria for different diagnoses, they tend to manifest a little differently in everybody because we're all individuals. So how that translates, and how I've been able to translate that specifically in my practice as a dance movement therapist, is understanding that the way everybody moves is different. We may have common movements, but just like our fingerprints are different to all of us, our movement signature is different to all of us. And so how we move is what is either helping or hindering our mental health and how we operate in our lives. So it's very easy in that sense, because it's just looking at the person that comes into the room, taking everything that they're bringing, noticing what's coming up in the body and what words are, they're able to express, and starting there, and there are some interventions that overlap, assessments that I will do with pretty much everybody that comes into the room, regardless of their age. I've worked with 3-year-olds. I've worked with 107-year-olds.
What? That's quite a
hold
age
up.
difference.
107?
107. That was my
Tell me,
client.
was it a woman?
It was a woman. Yeah.
Did she get down?
Did she get down?
Did she get down?
So she as much as a 107-year-old could, right? She did, but no joke. I went to a group once. I had a woman in my group. She was in her 90s, and I was playing some Motown. I don't always use music, but I was using music in this group. It was a particular group with dementia, Alzheimer's.
Oh, I
was playing some Motown, and she looks at me and she goes, "When are we going to drop it like it's hot?"
Yes.
Yes. Oh, okay.
That's my woman there.
Does your grandson know that you say that? It was hysterical. So, the 107-year-old, she was a character, to say the least. She had been brought up in a very specific class and very specific part of Chicago, actually, and she. They were mistaking isolation for actually almost a little bit of privilege and a little bit of prejudice. She would only sit with people who she felt aligned with her status. And so she ended up spending a lot of time in her room, because
I kind of feel like that sometimes. Kind of energy level.
And the thing is, I don't even think it was necessarily like race, right? It wasn't like, oh, you don't look like me, so I won't sit with you. I think in her mind, she didn't know that she had dementia and the level to which it was. And she would see other people around her, and it was kind of like, that person's crazy. I can't sit with that person, So anyway, we got to work together, and really, again, I was just meeting her in her abilities, in her movements. And oftentimes that was in her room. It was bedside. But she was able to walk. She did use a cane and a walker at times. But yeah, she was perfectly capable of moving her body. And once we take away like our own agendas and the assumptions that we make of how a 107-year-old person should move,
Right.
She was actually not as isolated as everybody thought she was.
That's pretty amazing. And so is it something the level of like you have them express their feelings, right? And then they do a movement that expresses that feeling. Is it become almost like a choreographer, like kind of like a piece, like when they're doing it? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like with they're having
Yeah.
specific
Like, is
feelings
it
or
real
anything?
dance moves, or are they
Yeah.
just moving their
Are they-
body?
It depends on the person. So, I mean,
Okay.
I've definitely had, so I guess to speak to like the choreography aspect, the closest thing that I can think of in the work that I've done, because I can't speak for all dance therapists, there are therapists that use performance as therapy. That's not something I do very much of. What does speak to me in terms of like a choreography is when I do groups, one of the groups that I will do is actually have each person go around and physically either tell something about themselves, kind of like an introduction, or show in your body how you're feeling, so you don't have to use any words, but it's kind of like an icebreaker, like, hello, my name is Erica and I'm feeling happy. But
I need to
instead
go
of
to
saying
this class.
happy, instead of saying
He's
happy,
so over
like,
dramatic.
right,
You know we do well.
I'll just do a movement, right, that expresses whatever happy is to me. And so what I'll encourage people to do is we string those movements along. And by the end of this segment of the session, we'll have kind of like a group dance, a group choreography.
Oh, fun.
But typically, yeah, right. Typically one-on-one, it really depends. If the individual's coming in and they happen to be very connected to movement, sometimes I can just sit back and they will like authentically move whatever's happening for them or whatever's coming up for them. And then we get to kind of sit and talk about that, or I can notice what habits and patterns I'm seeing in the body. But more often than not, it's really more pedestrian movement, so I do interventions where it's kind of like, how do you know you're feeling that? Where do you feel that in your body? But I think more often than not, it's actually about taking the themes that I hear and using body interventions to get there. So I'll hear like, I'm having a hard time transitioning, or I'm not feeling super productive, or I feel stuck. And so it's like, how can we use the body to explore what those themes look like, but also how they manifest in us? So it might be like, this is what it looks like to be stuck. How do we move out of that? And so most of the movement's coming from the client. I'm not really suggesting outside of an assessment just to see like where they are in their body.
So it's almost like what are the people that don't speak? What are those people called? The mimes?
Oh, like a mime?
Yeah. So like if someone's stuck, they would just like squish themselves, and then you'd say, how do you get out of it? And have them move in a way that they would get out of it?
Sometimes, yeah. Like more, I guess, within the last week, I had a client where we were talking about, it's not always in the context of trauma, but oftentimes we'll hear like fight, flight, or freeze.
Mm-hmm.
And asking the client to embody that, what does it look like when you freeze? And then actually just having them take on whatever that posture is, and then asking them to notice what comes up in the body. Like, my heart's racing, I'm sweaty, I can't move.
So it's almost like somatic therapy, which
Yeah.
Yes. Ironically, the term, like somatic obviously is not a new term, but somatic movement therapy is actually a little newer than dance movement therapy. It's really funny how some of these practices have actually evolved way past us because we haven't been very visible. So yes, it's a lot like somatic therapy. The difference is the therapeutic relationship. So movement therapy is very much about the relationship between the therapist and the client. So it's not so much the interventions we give, it's really between how the trust and the relationship evolves to allow that person to either trust someone else or to build trust within themselves.
who's the ideal client for something like this?
Oh, wow. For me, honestly, for me at this point, my ideal client is someone who has no body awareness whatsoever. That's like my favorite client to work with right now, because while it's fun and sometimes easy to work with someone that's like, I love the body, I love to dance, I'm ready to dive deep. That's great because it's almost like there's less work for me to there's work to do, but I don't have to pull it out, you know?
Right.
Whereas if somebody says, you know, I've been overeating, or I've been binging, or I've been, you know, I've had disordered eating my entire life, and I've shut off the voice that tells me what's happening in my body, and I'm so good at doing that I don't know how to turn it back on. That to me is the ideal client, because it is about connecting the mind and the body again, and bringing awareness to what is happening in our body that's contributing to these maladaptive or really unhealthy behaviors.
Heck yes.
And what I think is really interesting is that, you know, you mentioned the body movement. So it's really body language in general that you're intuitively picking up on other individuals when you said, you know, how they move or how they react. There's a part of it that, you know, we do this work in other, you know, and this is why I love this, is because everything overlaps. But a lot of that also, Johanna, you know, when we do things like mirror work, when we're looking at the mirror reflections of ourselves, is to understand what we look like on there. And it's kind of neat to see how some of these things can go interlock and be hand in hand and be benefit on top of each other. Because, man, I was thinking, like, when you were talking, I was like, man, I could have used that while I was doing, you know, that whole part of therapy. Like, because I really struggled with my body. I like Johanna mentioned, I had done yoga therapy, and that's a little bit different than this. But again, it's kind of the same feeling. Knowing and recognizing your feelings, what comes up, what movements feel good, what doesn't feel good, and sitting in it, you know, like in that point. But with dance, it's not sitting in it, it's moving it.
Right.
So that's what's so interesting to me.
Which is awesome, because a lot of times people will get the feeling, which is because I use somatic therapy in my work. So some people will recognize the feeling, but that's surface level. Like, they don't recognize the connection, the sensation that's in their body, where that actual story is stored, you know? And so the fact that you're getting people in touch with not just their emotions and how to express them through movement, but connecting them to that actual physical place where that energy lives. Like, we need more of that in the world.
Well, and I mean, most of our communication is nonverbal. And it's not even like 40, 50, you know, not 40, 60, you know, or like, it's not even.
And it's so subconscious,
it's like
too.
90, 10, right? Like 80, 20. So like 80% of our communication isn't even in the words that we speak. Why do we rely on our words so much?
Right.
And now with technology and social media and this pandemic, like, we are so out of touch with our bodies. We're just out of touch, you know, and then we're like, oh, I'm stressed, I'll just go lose myself in Instagram for a while. And it's like, wait,
TikTok.
That's even more out of touch. Right. Which is so funny.
What?
Because, like, TikTok, I think, to me, is actually, it pays homage to the fact that we do need our bodies, right? Like,
well, yeah, because there's a lot of people on there dancing.
Yeah.
So people are getting in touch. That one, they're moving way more than you would be on Instagram. On Instagram, you're not going to get up and dance.
No.
I mean, they could. I mean, you could.
Will.
Yeah, I meant getting lost in the rabbit hole of just watching it and not doing it. Like, you're actually just watching somebody dance, but you're not doing shit. Like,
I'm awful. Like, half the time I'm watching things that don't even pertain to movement, you know, and then I wonder why they're in my feed. Well, because you just watch them for an hour. You know? So it's crazy, but we're so disconnected, and then it becomes foreign. You know, people are like, dance therapy. Ugh, I don't dance. I'm like, but you move, you know, and so it's hard, because what set us apart in the field is that word dance, but it's actually just a small part of the work that we actually do. And so I like to use the word dance movement, or movement in particular, because I like, when I give presentations, the first thing I ask people is like, how did you move today? You know, and typically people are like, oh, I walked, I jogged, I did yoga. I'm like, that's great, but not exercise. Like, how else did you move? And you kind of hear crickets for a little bit.
I don't know.
And then you hear somebody like in one of my older adult groups, it was great, because these 80 and 90-year-olds with dementia were like, brush my teeth, comb my hair, played the piano. I'm like, yes, like, now you're talking, cooked. Maybe they're not cooking now, but you know, like, these movements that we're not doing a lot of anymore, because we're outsourcing it. Like, somebody else is doing it for us, you know? So it's great for people to just kind of sit back and get back in touch with all the movement that they're actually doing. Right. And then when a client comes in, they think, oh, wait, you're not really going to add movement. You're just going to extract the movement that's already in me. Yeah, exactly. Right.
And I loved that you said that it's evolved because of how things have changed, because that was one of my questions to you was, how do you feel that dance therapy has evolved? Because like you said, a lot of people are out of touch with their bodies through the years, but in the years that you have been in it, like, have you seen the practice evolve in a way of like you're doing more of a certain thing now within that practice?
Yes. I mean, so oddly enough, I feel like maybe 10 years ago, I myself definitely saw the separation of like, are we going to move into the 21st century, or are we going to kind of stay true to our roots? Which, I mean, roots are important, but let's be honest, our roots as is not new, but we're definitely seeing with this whole like second civil rights movement, our roots are very white centered, and that's not a place that we all want to be anymore, in our field specifically, but I think in society too. And so, you know, for us to say like we have to stick to those does a disservice to all of the past therapists, the past dance movement healers. And so, one, like we're definitely seeing a shift in how we pay respect to really where the true roots of the profession have come from. I think also what we're seeing is a true coming of age into the 21st century. So we're seeing dance movement therapists bring practices online. You know,
that was going to be my next question.
Like go that coaching route, which I myself am blown away by, because it's not authentic to me. I'm like, oh, how do you do that? You know, I'm very much in person. I'm definitely that stereotypical therapist, but
so you don't offer this online. You personally don't offer this online. I do now.
I mean, I do because of the pandemic. I do it
kind of forced you in that direction.
Right. And I mean, it is under the guidelines of how I can practice as a therapist in my state. So that's kind of a whole topic in itself. But so no, I haven't gone the quite like coaching route, but there are several dance therapists that are taking their dance therapy training and then using it to reach a whole new group of people who maybe, you know, are afraid of the stigma around therapy or don't want to enter therapy, but really need a more direct, goal-oriented approach.
Right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's evolving in many, many different ways. Like I said, really stepping into what we need to be doing in terms of social justice, anti-racism. We are really joining the 21st century, which happened quite a while ago, but you know, kind of keeping up with technology and trying to make what we do more accessible. And my whole thing was just visibility. You know, I recognized early on that if I wanted to have any longevity in my career, people needed to know what I did. And then I was shocked to find out that not a lot of people had ever heard of dance therapy. So it kind of just started me on this path of education and advocacy. And that just kind of opened up so many other doors. So that's kind of where I am now.
Is this something that insurance covers?
It is, but not under dance therapy. So
through a
I'm
loophole?
also a licensed clinical professional counselor. And so as a counselor, that is how I bill insurance.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I like it.
Like social workers, you know, psychologists, like you have to bill under your state license.
I mean, it's considered psychotherapy, so right. I mean, that's so.
But it's a loophole, and I think it's an awesome loophole.
Well, I don't know if it's a loophole so much as actually like jumping right in.
Yeah,
like it's like,
I mean,
in the state of Illinois, this is how you have to practice psychotherapy. You know, and we're kind of like, but we're already psychotherapists. We're dance therapists, and they don't. It's taking time. That's not it's not its own license. I don't know if it ever will be. It's just, you know, it's a registry and then a board certification. But until then, I had a dual program, so I was able to sit for counseling licensure pretty quickly, and have been able to practice that way, which is ironic a little bit because some people see that and think, oh, it's legitimate if you're a counselor, you know, like, oh, my insurance takes this. Okay.
But that's why I asked, because, you know, that's the age that we are, you know, we're bridging the gap right now between the way that people thought the world was and the way the world is going to be. And so in that bridge, we have to use what we have in that moment. And so, there's quantum technologies that come out, and because now they're FDA approved in England, people will actually look at it who wouldn't look at it before. So if people are like, oh, this is, dance therapy. Oh, that's woo woo. Oh, wait, she's licensed and she's certified. Oh, well, let me give it a try now. And so what it does is it takes those people who are in that old paradigm, the old mindset of I have to have a certification or a degree in this for it to be legit. And it's opening their minds. And so I think it's not a bad thing. I think it's again, we're bridging that gap between. And so people come across that bridge. Now their mind's open, and now they don't give two shits whether you have a certification or not, because you've opened their mind to something, but maybe they would not have if you weren't. And so I don't see it as a bad thing.
Yeah. And I think, go ahead.
Oh no, I was gonna say, like, I don't necessarily see it bad either. I think for me, it was a way to make it more accessible, and affordable.
Yes.
Clients were like, "Oh, great, who covers that?" And I thought, "Oh, actually, your health insurance does."
And that's amazing. I think that's because therapy is expensive.
Right. It's like, oh, I only pay $20 instead of $150.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, I'll try it.
And as much as, like, I know people can be very fearful of therapy, especially, I don't need a therapist. It means I'm a whack job, or, I can't handle my shit.
Right. I'm crazy.
Yeah. So, like, I'm all for therapy, and I've done all different kinds of therapy, and even things that wouldn't be considered certified. But what I love about it is that, like how Johanna had said, it is bridging the gap to both of them together, but it's also sharing it with one another. So the people who are certified are actually bringing in to the level of get people understanding something like dance therapy, which is considered newer, right? You're able to be in that old school sense of saying, well, I'm a certified, psychotherapist, and be able to state that to them so that they have that comfort zone, and then they can try something a little bit out of their comfort zone. It's literally opening the door to being open-minded. And that's that's how I started with therapy, when I started doing different things like yoga therapy, or, trailing off to things that I was being a little bit like, well, maybe there's a little bit more. And that's what intrigues me so much about the whole dance therapy, because there's so many different individual things. There's also something called laughing therapy, drama therapy. Like there's so many different versions.
Is there a shopping therapy plan?
There's gotta be.
Well, there's retail therapy, but you don't need a therapist to do that.
But doctor's orders.
I mean, we joke, but like that's also what complicates things, because we jokingly throw around the word therapy, right? Like it kind of just becomes something that makes you feel better. And so in the realm of therapy, I was shocked at how many people didn't know what psychotherapy was anymore, because that's kind of in our definition, right? Psychotherapeutic use of movement. And I would see these like dumbfounded looks, and I thought, oh, did I lose you at movement? And they're like, no, you lost me at psychotherapy. What is that? And I thought, well, that's strange, because that word used to immediately scare people, because it was like, oh my God, this person's going to read me. They're going to judge me. They're going to diagnose me.
Right.
And so the fact that kind of got lost in translation a while back, kind of took me back a little bit. And I think also something that people don't understand about dance therapy is that it's not in itself a therapy in terms of, it has its own modality, it has its own techniques and theories, but we always couple it with a psychotherapeutic approach. So I've had people say, oh, thanks, but I'm looking for CBT. And I'm like, oh, well, let me refer you to a dance therapist that does cognitive behavior therapy. They're kind of like, wait, why would they do both? Because we integrate both. Right. But I mean, that's what we're taught in school, is to kind of
customize it.
In most schools, that you pick an orientation, whether you're Rogerian, whether you're humanistic, whether you're Freudian, and then you use the body and those methods and modalities and theories to support that work as well. So like, I'm very person-centered. So I literally meet people where they are, very, kind of positive, unconditional positive regard for all of my clients. But that's not everybody's cup of tea, so it's really important that if you're interested in dance therapy, you look at the framework with which that therapist is working, because we all practice a little differently.
So because of that, because first of all, I just want to let you know, Annette Peterson on here, one of our guests, had said your definition of movement is very cool. She also said that what we do on a daily basis is not just walking. So that's one of the things that she had noted on there. But it does bring me to the next topic, which is, with movement. Are there any tips that you can give us to maybe be more aware to our audience of our movement? Because you mentioned, like, in the morning we wake up, what are we doing? Like, are there things that we should be, questioning ourselves in the morning, or doing things that maybe help break us out so that we can understand our feelings, just to give us a little bit more of an introduction of dance movement?
Yeah. I mean, so if you're already a very aware person, when you wake up, you can start asking yourself those questions. How am I feeling? Where do I feel it in my body? So I just released a free journal, so well, I'll give you the 3 questions the journal has, but if you want to download it, you can. But it's basically asking ourselves, what do I feel in my body? How does this impact my mental health? And what am I going to do to address it? And so it gets us thinking, like, right at the beginning of the day, or whenever you're able to do it, how our mind and our body are connected. So I had a client do it, and she was like, oh, I'm noticing my shoulders are tense. And I was like, well, what does that lead to? How does that impact your mental health? And she was like, well, I notice that if I'm tense, it increases my anxiety. So I will be anxious. Great. Okay. What are you going to do to deal with or address the tension in your body to diffuse the anxiety? And she was like, I'm going to roll my shoulders throughout the day. I'm going to take stretch breaks. I'm going to make sure that I'm breathing consciously, and I'm going to take a walk around my apartment. Fantastic. Great. So it's little things that we can do to just start becoming more aware of how our mind and our body are connected. But 3 things that I always suggest are, 1, before you even get out of bed, stretch. Like, stretch into the corners of your bed, because I don't know about people listening. I wake up in the fetal position, and that is not the way to show up in the world. Let me show up as small and tight and confined as possible, right? So if I want to show up in this life, if I want to show up in the world on that day, I have to take up space. I have to allow myself to expand into whatever areas I can. And we can do that before we even step foot on, our bedroom floor. So we stretch in our beds, consciously take some breaths. And then when you go to get out of bed, make sure those feet are planted, and if you can stand on your own 2 feet, be very conscious about how you do that before you start to go about your day, because I guarantee you, if we don't pay attention, all of a sudden we're downstairs having coffee and we don't even know how we got there.
Yep.
So,
Which is a lot of people, because there's so many people today that aren't. It amazes me. I can talk about presence and awareness every single day of my life, and I'd still find new people that are like, how do you do that? Because we run on autopilot so often. I mean, I did for years. For years I ran on autopilot. Driving even, I'd be like, how did I get here?
Well, our cars do it now. I mean, look, we're like buying cars that drive themselves. So we don't even have to be aware in the car.
But that's the thing, is the society, has taken it to a place of where we don't have to be present, but that just leads to so much more. It just makes my job, I'm never going to not have clients, what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but I mean, that's not a good thing either at the same time, but it's important for us to constantly give these kind of tips. And I love the one of taking up space and stretching in your bed. Yeah. I love that. And I'm actually someone who wakes up that way. I take up my whole bed. I'll wake up like in a triangle, like X across the bed, but there was a time when I woke up in the fetal position. And so you're absolutely right. I love that one.
Yeah. No, and I appreciate what you're saying is like, people always say, oh, mental health practitioners will always have work because there's always mental health, right? Healthcare will always be there because, people in healthcare will always be needed. And it's like, the need to work in the body will always be there. Because
right, exactly.
Even when we get there, if we all get there, we're going to need help practicing it, And I was joking, but I say this a lot, that you can ask Siri a lot of things, but you can't ask her how your body feels.
Right.
You can't ask her, how am I feeling in my body today, Siri? She's not going to know the answer to that one.
Well, and most of the time when you ask someone how are you doing, they say I'm busy, or
I'm fine.
I'm fine. It's like
I'm fine.
Well, busy isn't really like an emotion, so
Right.
How are
forgotten
you?
how to identify emotions.
You know what I mean? So it's
I'm
just
bored.
if you just listen to
okay, I don't know
people,
that. Yeah.
you listen to people, you're amazed at how disconnected they are from their own reality, let alone their body.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's oftentimes where we start in movement therapy is like, how connected are we to what's even happening? You know, you say you're anxious. Why? I don't know. Okay. Oh, I come from an anxious family. Okay.
Blame it on the ancestry.
Right. I'm like, okay, I mean, that might be the case, but that doesn't have to be your,
right.
That doesn't have to be true for the rest of your life.
So, I'm in a small town. They say I got it honest.
Guys. So let me ask you something with the idea of it being interwoven with other things customized to each individual. How does music or anything like that play in with it? Because I think I think of music as well. So with sound, do you have a lot of people who, even though they're moving, have suggested they want a certain sound or they think of certain music, or does it ever come up?
It does. And this question comes up always, of like, how do you use music? Don't you use music? Do you, so, again, I can speak from my own personal experience. There are some dance therapists, I think, that always use music. And it's also going to be dependent on the work that you do. So when I work with clients that have Alzheimer's in particular, I always use music because that to me, for the most part, is kind of like the key that unlocks our potential for movement. To come in and just automatically start in the body, although I can be a little bit more intimidating, but we put on some music and we start moving together, and then kind of the wall comes down, and then we can talk and relate. And but I would say it's about 50-50. Actually, since I've done remote, I don't use music at all right now, which is really interesting. Not that I can't, but I haven't had any requests for music. Whereas prior to that, the way I set up my office, I always have music playing in the background. And it's very faint. It's just for me to set the space. And so
just to relax somebody.
Yeah. When we start to move, I will say, would you like me to turn the music off? Sometimes they'll say yes. Oftentimes it's no, turn it up. Or it's like, this isn't my vibe. Can you put on some XYZ,
Can you put on some Whitesnake?
I know, that's basically what I was just going to say. Right? Like, I'd be like, what kind of request can you put in there?
Yeah, I mean, hey, with Spotify or YouTube Music, you can play anything.
Let me go get on the hood of the car. Hold on a second. Let me show you how I feel.
Death metal comes out.
My thing is, well, one, we're not music therapists, so we're not. Right. I'm not using music in that capacity. I will use music to help support the energy in the room, so if it's very melancholy, I'll try to bring in music that supports that. If it's really, really hyper energetic, we'll use that and then maybe modify or modulate it to bring the energy down. But it can be really empowering for somebody to say, like, this is the music that I listen to, because your culture, your tradition, your heritage may be different than mine. I may have no clue what that music is. Who am I to decide what you want to listen to? Or I have, younger people where I'm starting to feel like the old person. And who is that? What artist is that? MTV, huh? So it's good to have both. I also don't want music influencing the movement too much, right? Like, we don't need to be putting on a song about love and then you moving to whatever that song is about, because it may actually contradict what your capacity for love is, or what you grew up,
that's interesting. Yeah, I'll tell you, when I'm emotional, I will listen to the type of music that relates to my emotion. And and for me personally, I mean, I'm not a dance therapist, so what do I know? But for me, it helps bring the emotion out of my body. Right. But that's probably a whole different line of work in itself right there.
I mean, it can, and that I think also perhaps like a music therapist can speak more to really how music to bring up emotions, or, they'll also use it in terms of like physical therapy or occupational therapy, or kind of more in line with that sometimes. Yeah. So, I mean, I think you can do all of the above. Again, I myself try to limit or just notice like what songs are being played and how those lyrics may contribute, hinder, or maybe even help, right? So if it's like, if we're talking about being strong, then maybe listening to a song like Stronger is a great option. If somebody says, I don't know what it means to be strong, and you play Stronger, it may totally derail
Right.
them or hijack
Okay.
them because they're like, this is scary. I don't know what this
Sure.
is. Right?
Yeah.
So maybe it's, bringing in a song that's more accessible because it's like, I can't access my strength right now, but my goal is to.
So it's really not dance at all.
It's body language. It's really movement, right? I mean, it's like body
Yeah.
movement more than anything.
That's how I see it. Again,
Yeah.
like there are therapists, especially because we come from this heritage of dance therapy. There are dance therapists who feel very strongly about the dance connection. It was funny. I had a client once. We had been working together for a couple months, and she came in one day and she was like, I just want to be told what to do. Like, I don't want to talk. I don't want to think. Like, I want to dance.
I have those days.
Yeah, she was like, just tell me some dance things to do. And I kind of looked at her like, that's not my role. Like, that's not what I do. I don't teach. So it was interesting. I said, okay, well, I happen to have a little bar in the studio. And I said, well, why don't we head over to the bar? And I said, well, you're familiar with ballet. Why don't we just go into first position, right? And what do you notice? And we didn't get any further. And she said, I'm ready for you to judge me. And I was like,
Wow.
Oh, okay. Well, let's talk about that. And
Right.
then the whole session became about judgment. How do we embody it? How do we feel it? Where did it come from? This dance quote of judgment. And so it was so interesting that it's like what she wanted, and that it wasn't about me taking her through those exercises, but just noticing what that was about, and what she expected and what naturally came up. And then just asking her like, okay, so you're expecting me to judge you. What's happening in your body? And she was like, my whole body just tensed up. My heart's racing, So I was like, okay, all right, let's deconstruct this and see, where this is coming from and how we can literally move through it.
Yeah, and it's basically her trying to give herself an out by saying, just tell me what to do so I don't have to be judged by you. Because then you'll like me no matter what, because I'm doing it. So I could totally see. Yeah, I could totally see that, where it's just like, just tell me what to do. Because, I don't want to deal with that.
Rejected by you.
Uh-huh.
Right. Well, and oddly enough, like a lot of what came up was that she was judged by family, and that doing her own thing or being told what to do got judgment either way, and so it was like we did a lot of work on just how to trust ourselves, and doing things and speaking up and speaking for our, for what was true to us. Like, it doesn't matter if other people get it or like it or want it. This is what I need for me. And it all started just because we stood in first position. Yeah.
How do you feel that people mostly come to you? Is it like somebody suggest you to it or say, hey, have you ever heard of dance therapy? Because I don't feel like it's that well known, and maybe it is at this point in day and age, but it's definitely more acceptable. But like, how do people go, I think I'm going to try dance therapy? Because like you said, people assume something that it's going to be dance or that. And what do you feel is the learning curve on there? Or do you feel like you have to go through that, or do the people who find you just know what dance therapy is?
Well, a little bit of both. So,
Okay.
When I first opened my practice, I don't want to say no one knew about it, but almost, I would say 80% of what I did was education. I was like, let me tell you about what it is, and then you can decide if this is what you need, or if I was working with Alzheimer's, particularly, I would go to a facility and actually do a lot of pro bono work so they could see how it worked. And then they would say, oh, excellent, sign us up. I like your cat just wanted to make an appearance.
She is.
Meanwhile, my dog is whining and I'm on mute. So that's how we run the show.
Yeah, right. So I think a little bit of like just my own marketing and want to educate people, need to advocate. Almost 10 years in business, especially within certain populations, people know, like, oh, you have a parent that's, got a movement or cognitive disorder. They need to be moving. They need dance therapy. Contact Erica or, contact Chicago Dance Therapy. That took time, but like that's where I am in one arena. I think with my individual clients that are not older adults, who are maybe looking for a more body-based approach to therapy, now more than ever, it's actually other talk therapists, other counselors that probably because of a lot of the networking I've done, know to refer people to my
if someone's
services.
on their insurance website and they're searching for a therapist, are you still going to come up even if they don't search, are you going to show up in the regular one and they're going to say, oh, what's this?
Oddly enough, people will call and they say, you were in network, right? Or you're in my area. I live down the street. And I hesitate a little. I probably shouldn't, but I say, are you aware of what dance therapy is? And they're like, no, what's that? Like, it doesn't register. I think it's the
they
name.
think it's a name.
I know you're licensed. You're a psychotherapist. You take my insurance. And so I just try to be real with people that, yeah, I can do the whole talk therapy thing. But when you work with me, you're actually getting, I think, more for your money, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I was saying it from
encourage you to do body work,
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I have to explain it to them more often than not. If they're calling from their panel, like from their insurance
Right.
company, they don't actually see the dance part. They just
Really?
see therapy.
That's what
Yeah.
I was thinking. Because if I was searching and I saw dance therapy, I would probably call and be like, do you take my insurance, right? Okay, so what do we do?
Right.
This sounds like a better route than a normal therapist. So that's why I was curious.
The other thing I'm seeing a lot of now is people are calling and they know what it is. That's new for me. I mean, when I first started, that was not happening. So I would say within the last 5 years, I hear the narrative of, oh, I've been looking for something like this for a long time. And I'm so glad you exist, or I wish I had known about you sooner. Or my EMDR therapist just referred me to you. So, or I heard about dance therapy. I live in Chicago and I Googled it and your name popped up, So it's like people are looking for it now. Not that they weren't in the past, but to say for how long the field has been around, the fact that I'm noticing just in the last 5 years that people are finally looking for it, is frustrating, but it's also very encouraging to know that this is now what people are looking for. And thanks to, researchers, it certainly didn't hurt us that a book called The Body Keeps the Score came out, a few years ago. And people know the value of the body in trauma work. So a lot more people who are looking for that know to look for movement-based.
And trauma work is a big thing right now. Because, I mean, that's one of the big things that I do. And so... Yeah. And that's where a lot of it's stored, is in the body. So I think it's awesome. I think it's another great avenue for people to go to.
And I mean, it's necessary, I think, for a lot of people. It's like, I was talking to someone the other day that, we have this age old, like, change the cognition, change the behavior, but we take it a step further, right? Because it's like, you change your movement, which changes your cognition, which
right?
Then changes the behavior. And then you don't have to keep changing the cognition. It sticks, right? Like, you change your movement and it's more permanent, right?
And you have to be more present for that. You have to slow down and be more present to change your movement.
Definitely. And people say, I uncovered more in like 2 sessions than I have in 9 years of psychotherapy, and that's not to say we move fast. I mean, I'm going at whatever pace the client needs, but the fact that the body is just such a powerful resource.
It unlocks so much more.
Right.
It unlocks so much more.
So I'm assuming, so do you do group therapy as well with that, or is it just individual? So it's group as well?
Yeah, I've done group, couple, family.
That's awesome.
The groups that I tend to do, like I said, are mostly with older adults that are affected by some type of, movement or cognitive disorder.
It's great for motor skills too, though, and just getting them moving and connecting with their body.
Yeah. And just as we age, people are so accustomed to thinking that they can't move. Everything's like, I can't do that anymore. I shouldn't do that anymore.
Well, that's old programming right there, because that's why we age so damn fast. Your cells are listening, people.
Right. So I'm like, well, I appreciate you telling me what you can't do, but I'm more interested in what you can, So just notice what you want to do. And if you're able to do it, then try, and at the end, it's like, especially in some of these groups, we have to be very careful, making sure that there's safety precautions, because we've had people that literally have not tried to stand up in years, stand up and dance, and like the CNAs like rush over to them like, oh my God, Mr. Smith's going to fall. I'm like, no, it's okay. Just kind of stand around him. We'll be all right. But, to see the smile on their faces and just the quality of life improve so drastically is.
Yeah. I mean, look how much you get so much more of your own power back. I mean, I bought a desk riser because you have so much more power when you're standing than sitting. And so I wanted to work standing up more, and it's just your power just doubles the minute you stand up.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we are coming at the tail end, but I wanted to give the times for our shameless plug that we allow all our guests to do. So if anyone wants to get a hold of you, we have your website on here, chicagodancetherapy.com. Is there any news or updates that you would love to give our audience so that they can not just connect with you, but if there's something cool going on? Like you said, I think you mentioned a download pamphlet or something that you also had available.
Yeah. So I guess the best way for people to access that is probably through Instagram. They can follow me at The Therapist Who Moves You. And then like in the bio, there's a link to my store. But yeah, there's a free journal. There's a list of 30 movement prompts that you can check out or try as many in one day, or you can do one every 30 days. And then a workbook I recently released, which is Body Awareness for Mental Health. But yeah, they can, Chicago Dance Therapy is a great way to connect with me, email me. And if people are interested, they can always join my newsletter, and I make sure I give out movement prescriptions every Monday.
Oh, that's really cool. I love that you do the movement prescriptions.
Right.
I need to sign up for that. No, I mean, that's
like, well, wait, a prescription doesn't actually have to always be filled by a pharmacist.
Yeah.
So what are some prescriptions I could be giving out that just come from the person,
That's great, because you're moving towards the direction of where we're going anyway.
Yeah. Annette says, this would so help my mom who has Alzheimer's. All she will do is watch TV. Thank you for talking about this. It's something that really is needed to talk about, because especially with what's going on in this world, and we're all kind of like stuck at home, and the level of feeling shut down, and the old programming is coming up where we, have to be feeling fear and all of that. So this is a really good way of connecting with your body, but also expressing. So I'm very appreciative of your time for coming on here. And is there anything else that you wanted to touch base on? Or if there's one thing that you want to have people remember about dance therapy, what do you think that would be? Putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no, I know. I'm like, we've already talked about so much. So I'm hoping people walk away with a lot of tidbits. But my favorite thing is the body holds answers to questions the mind doesn't even know to ask.
That's a great one.
Don't remember anything. Just remember that your body is holding so many things that just thinking alone does not do justice to.
Heck
and
yes.
if you don't know the right way to ask those questions, you'll never uncover the answers.
I love it. Well, thank you so much. Guys, we are going to wrap it up here. We will be back live next week with Jay. We promise Jay will be on talking about Bigfoot. Yes, we're talking about Bigfoot next week.
Cool.
We will see you guys.